Hi guys, in this video we are gonna speak about 5 nuclear close calls which could have led to big disaster and then lead to a war. The damage caused by the nuclear weapons is not necessarily be limited to the participating countries. Even the neighboring countries will be affected and even the economy of whole world will be disturbed. Nuclear weapons are even more powerful than the atomic bomb used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Number 1. October 25, 1962. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, U.S. military planners expected that sabotage operations might precede any nuclear first strike by the Soviet Union. Around midnight on October 25, 1962, a guard at the Duluth Sector Direction Center saw a figure climbing the security fence. He shot at it and activated the sabotage alarm, which automatically set off similar alarms at other bases in the region. The pilots had been told there would be no practice alert drills and, according to political scientist Scott D. Sagan, fully believed that a nuclear war was starting. Before the planes were able to take off, the base commander contacted Duluth and learned of the error. An officer in the command center drove his car onto the runway, flashing his lights and signaling to the aircraft to stop. The intruder was discovered to be a bear. Sagan writes that the incident raised the dangerous possibility of an ADC interceptor accidentally shooting down a Strategic Air Command (SAC) bomber. Interceptor crews had not been given full information by SAC of plans to move bombers to dispersal bases or the classified routes flown by bombers on continuous alert as part of Operation Chrome Dome. Declassified ADC documents later revealed that the incident led to changes in the alert klaxon system to prevent a recurrence. Number 2. October 27, 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. At the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Soviet patrol submarine B-59 almost launched a nuclear-armed torpedo while under harassment by American naval forces. One of several vessels surrounded by American destroyers near Cuba, B-59 dove to avoid detection and was unable to communicate with Moscow for a number of days. USS Beale began dropping practice depth charges to signal B-59 to surface. However, the captain of the Soviet submarine and its sample took these to be real depth charges. If low batteries affecting the submarine's life support systems and unable to make contact with Moscow, the commander of B-59 feared that war had already begun and ordered the use of a 10-kiloton nuclear torpedo against the American fleet. The Zampolit agreed, but the chief of staff of the flotilla, second in command of the flotilla, Vasily Arkhipov refused permission to launch. He convinced the captain to calm down, surface, and make contact with Moscow for new orders. On the same day, an American U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba, and another U-2 flown by United States Air Force Captain Charles Maltby from Eielson Air Force Base, Alaska, strayed 300 miles, 480 kilometers, into Soviet airspace. Despite orders to avoid Soviet airspace by at least 100 miles, 160 kilometers, a navigational error caused by the Aurora Borealis took the U-2 over the Chukotka Peninsula, causing Soviet MiG interceptors to scramble and pursue the aircraft. American F-102A interceptors armed with GAR-11 Falcon nuclear air-to-air missiles, each with a 0.25 kiloton yield, were then scrambled to escort the U-2 into friendly airspace. Individual pilots were capable of arming and launching their missiles. The incident remained secret for many years. Number 3. April 15, 1969. After the 1969 EC-121 shootdown incident, F-4 Phantom fighter jets at Kunsan Air Base were ordered to load B-61 nuclear bombs and began planning and preparations for a nuclear strike against North Korea. After a few hours, the order to stand down was given. The jet never took off. Reportedly, President Richard Nixon was drunk when he gave the order for a nuclear attack against the DPRK. The order to stand down was given on the advice of Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Number 4. November 9, 1979. Computer errors at the NORAD headquarters in Peterson Air Force Base, the Strategic Air Command Command Post in Offutt Air Force Base, the National Military Command Center in the Pentagon, and the alternate National Military Command Center in the Raven Rock Mountain Complex led to alarm and full preparation for a non-existent large-scale Soviet attack. NORAD notified National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski that the Soviet Union had launched 250 ballistic missiles with a trajectory for the United States, stating that a decision to retaliate would need to be made by the president within 3 to 7 minutes. NORAD computers then placed the number of incoming missiles at 2,200. Strategic Air Command was notified, and nuclear bombers prepared for takeoff. Within 6 to 7 minutes of the initial response, PAVE-PAWS satellite and radar systems were able to confirm that the attack was a false alarm. Congress quickly learned of the incident because Senator Charles H. Percy was present at the NORAD headquarters during the panic. A General Accounting Office investigation found that a training scenario was inadvertently loaded into an operational computer in the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Commenting on the incident, U.S. State Department Advisor Marshall Schulman stated that false alerts of this kind are not a rare occurrence. There is a complacency about handling them that disturbs me. Soviet General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev composed a letter to U.S. President Jimmy Carter that the false alarm was fraught with a tremendous danger, and I think you will agree with me that there should be no errors in such matters. In the months following the incident, there were 3 more false alarms at NORAD, 2 of them caused by faulty computer chips. One of them forced the National Emergency Airborne Command Post to taxi into position at Andrews Air Force Base, No. 5, 7 to November 11, 1983. Main article, Able Archer 83. Able Archer 83 was a command post exercise carried out by NATO military forces and political leaders between 7 and November 11, 1983. The exercise simulated a Soviet conventional attack on European NATO forces 3 days before the start of the exercise, transitioning to a large-scale chemical war, and on day 1 of the exercise, NATO forces sought political guidance on the use of nuclear weapons to stem the Soviet advance, which was approved by political leaders. NATO then began simulating preparations for a transition to nuclear war. These simulations included 170 radio-silent flights to airlift 19,000 U.S. troops to Europe, regularly shifting military commands to avoid nuclear attack, the use of new nuclear weapon release procedures, the use of nuclear command, control, and communications networks for passing nuclear orders, the moving of NATO forces in Europe through each of the alert phases from DEFCON 5 to DEFCON 1, and the participation of political leaders like Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl, and Ronald Reagan. The issue was worsened by leaders referring to B-52 sorties as nuclear strikes, by the increased use of encrypted diplomatic channels between the US and UK, and by the nuclear attack false alarm in September. In response, Soviet nuclear-capable aircraft were fueled and armed ready to launch on the runway, and ICBMs were brought up to alert. Soviet leaders believed the exercise was a ruse to cover NATO preparations for a nuclear first strike and frantically sent a telegram to its residencies seeking information on NATO preparations for an attack. The exercise closely aligned with Soviet timeline estimations that a NATO first strike would take 7 to 10 days to execute from the political decision being made. Soviet forces stood down after 11th of November when the exercise ended, and NATO was not aware of the complete Soviet response until British intelligence asset Oleg Gordievsky passed on the information. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to watch this video in Hindi, subscribe to our second channel.